Danger at Diablo, Chapter 16. Annie Gets a Hunch. The Shanleys tried their best to make Annie and Tag feel at ease at the supper table, but Rango's presence made it impossible. Edith was gay and playful and chattered constantly, but even Tag failed to laugh at her jokes. He was too busy scowling at Rango. It was a relief to everyone when the meal was over. Edith led Tag and Annie out onto the broad veranda to catch the air before bedtime, while the two men lighted their cigars and sauntered into the library. Shanley could hardly wait to ask Rango what had happened this morning on the jump-off trail. Rango saw to it that the library door was tightly closed before he gave Shanley the answer. The bullet that hit the outcrop of granite beside the trail was Rufe's first shot at McTavish. He missed by 6 feet, and McTavish had his 6-gun out and was popping away across the canyon as quick as a flash. He yelled at me to hit the ground and roll behind a rock. That's what he tried to do. He paused to relight his cigar, and Shanley grunted impatiently. Go on, then what? I shot him myself. He said it matter-of-factly. In the back. Shanley winced. He knew Rango was cold-blooded. It had been useful to him, but there was something about shooting a man in the back. Rango saw his reaction. He waved it off. I had to. Both the Hortons were missing him a mile. Anyway, he keeled over and rolled right off the edge of the trail. It's a long ways down right there. You checked that. Shanley nodded. Yes, I know. Are you sure he was, finished? Rango nodded vigorously. I don't leave my jobs half done, Shanley, he boasted. I climbed down as far as I could, about 50 feet. I could see the broken brush down below where he fell, but he dropped out of sight. It's about 200 feet to the bottom there at least, and he went all the way. But are you sure? And maybe your shot didn't hit him square. However it hit him, nobody's going to fall that far into a rocky bottom arroyo and live. I suppose not. Shanley still frowned. But if he had some breath left when he hit bottom, Rango grinned, it's a sure thing he's lost it by now, because I left Rufe and Rube Horton out there to find him and see that he's laid under nice and proper. Well, in that case, Shanley felt cheerful now. He gave Rango a handful of his best cigars. Everything was going to be all right now. It had been a profitable day. Out on the wide veranda, Annie and Edith visited and rocked in the high-backed wicker chairs that had been one of the biggest sensations of the lawn party. They were the only two of their kind that the admiring Diablo citizens had ever seen west of Missouri. Tag was feeling neglected, as Edith chatted on gaily about her school and her friends and her dresses. He listened from a lonely perch on the side railing and wished he had eaten more supper. Rango being there had sort of spoiled his usual good appetite. Oh! Edith caught herself up suddenly with a pretty gesture of confusion. I'm so sorry. Here I've been rattling on about myself, and I know you must be feeling just terrible about your uncle. Please forgive me. It's all right, Annie smiled. It was fun to hear about your school. I wish you could be going back with me this fall, Edith sighed. But of course now I suppose you wouldn't be able. Annie, why don't you get rid of that silly little ranch? I know you could sell it for a good price with all the new settlers coming out all the time, and you could leave Tag here with Dad, and you could come back to school with me. We'd have a wonderful time. Annie shook her head. My place is here in Diablo with Tag. I'll never sell the ranch. Edith pouted prettily. Please change your mind, Annie. We'd have such fun together. As a matter of fact, Annie reminded her, the ranch is Uncle Luke's property, not mine. I couldn't sell it to anyone if I wanted to. But if he doesn't come back, it'll be yours. You're his heirs, you and Tag. Annie nodded. I suppose so, but I still feel that he's coming back. And when he does, I know he'll square himself. Edith decided it was time to drop the subject. She would get to it another time. Oh, my dear, I do hope you're right, and the men are all wrong. Then she waved her arm in a graceful gesture toward the moonlit garden, with its damply fragrant flowers and wide lawns. Let's forget about it now and just enjoy the moonlight. Isn't it heavenly? Indians don't like moonlight. Tag jumped off his perch on the railing with a clatter. They like it dark, so they can sneak up real quiet on the wagons and scalp everybody and steal all their horses and cattle. Oh! Edith jumped to her feet and clapped her hands over her ears. You horrid little boy! Talking about things like scalping! Ugh! I won't listen! And she fled into the house in a flurry of rustling taffeta. Now you've done it, Mr. Tag Oakley. Annie kept the grin out of her voice. You've got some apologizing to do. Aw, Annie. He was worried now. I just thought maybe she'd like to know about Indians. I didn't mean to scare her away, honest. He gulped. Shall I go tell her I'm sorry? Never mind, hun. Tomorrow's enough time. Golly, he sat down, looking sad. I hope she didn't mean what she called me. Am I a hard little boy, sis? Of course not. She was just upset. Annie rumpled his hair, but he didn't grin back at her. Her heart went out to him. Tell you what, she told him cheerfully, we'll get the pony saddled up and take ourselves for a fast little jaunt just into town and back. And if the general store is still open, I'll squander a nickel on some peppermint lozenges. How's that? Let's go! He was halfway down the steps. Whoa there! Annie picked up the kerosene lantern and the strip of sulfur matches that were always left handy to the porch. I'll saddle up while you go up to my room and fetch my little change purse. I can't buy peppermints without money. Sure thing! He made the steps 2 at a time. Wait! Annie laughed at his eagerness. Better bring my Springfield, too. No telling what we might run into. He disappeared into the house, and Annie took the lighted lantern with her to the barn. She was tired and worried, but she wanted Tag to go to bed happy. Their little gallop to Diablo and back should relax both of them. She was still saddling the reluctant Pixie, who had settled down to sleep and didn't want to be disturbed, when Tag came back with the purse and the rifle. He sat down on the top step and hefted the heavy rifle. One of these days, Annie would let him shoot with it. In the library, Dude Rango was getting ready to leave. I still think you're making a mistake letting those Oakley kids stay here. Annie's got a sharp eye, and not much gets past her. She as good as called me a liar a couple of times, and the sooner you get her and the boy away from here, the safer you'll be. But Shanley refused to worry. Can't you see that by having those two here, I'm proving to everybody that I'm their friend in spite of what their crooked uncle has done to me? Why, Diablo will be buzzing about this tomorrow. And when I offer to take their miserable little ranch off their hands in a couple of weeks and send them back east to their relatives, that'll be final proof of my big, generous heart. I'll be the town hero, no less. I hope so. Rango's tone indicated that he didn't agree. You haven't much time left before those settlers start flocking out to claim their lots. I know, Shanley almost shouted. Rango irritated him sometimes. How about a couple of forged IOUs in the old man's writing? It would cut down the price you'll have to pay her for the ranch. And I'm handy with the pen, you know. Not necessary. Shanley waved it away. Out on the veranda steps, Tag was hunting a big grizzly bear while he waited for Annie to bring the horses for the ride to town. The clump of cactus beyond the well made a fine grizzly if you didn't look too close. Tag lifted the heavy Springfield to his shoulder and took wobbly aim. Bang! He made believe he was pulling the trigger. Got you that time, old bear! A hand came down over his shoulder and grabbed at the rifle. Tag almost let go in his surprise. Then he saw that it was Rango who was trying to take the gun, and he held on angrily, kicking at him and yelling, Let go! Let go yourself, pest, or I'll... Rango gave a final twist of the rifle and ripped it out of Tag's hands. He started to examine it by the dim light of the veranda lamp. Loaded, too. Don't you know it ain't safe for kids your size to have guns? I better keep this so you won't hurt yourself. You give that back to me. It's my sister's. Tag was trying to get his hands on the gun, and Rango was holding it away, high in the air. Or maybe I'll just fix it so you can't let it go off and do any damage. Rango pushed him aside so roughly that Tag stumbled and almost fell. Then the wiry young gunman gripped the rifle by its barrel and started to smash it across the metal hitching post in front of the porch. A rock hurtled out of the darkness from the direction of the barn. It caught Rango in the wrist and brought a yell of pain from his lips. He dropped the heavy Springfield and grabbed his injured wrist. Annie stepped quickly into the circle of light, grim-faced and angry. She retrieved her rifle while Rango was still nursing his wrist and glaring at her. Try bullying someone your own size, mister, Annie told him. Or maybe that's not your style. Rango glared, but the hasty arrival of John Shanley from inside the house stopped his angry reply before he had time to make it. What's going on? Shanley demanded. Your friend Mr. Rango seemed to be trying to smash my rifle, Annie told him evenly, but he gave it up. I wasn't going to smash it, Rango said angrily. I was only joking with the boy. You joke sort of rough, Annie told him, and turned to Tag. Did he hurt you? Tag shook his head, but he stood close to her and stared defiantly at Rango. Annie took his arm. Reckon you'd better be turning in, Punkin. We'll let that ride go till tomorrow, she said. It's been a long day, and maybe we're all a mite edgy. She led him up the steps. At the top, she turned to look back at the two men. If you don't mind, Mr. Shanley, I'd like a word with you, when Mr. Rango's gone. Then she disappeared into the house with Tag. I don't like the way she said that, Rango frowned. Sounds like she might have something figured out that we don't know about. Shanley nodded quickly. It could be. Why don't you wait around a while out by the barn? I'll run the shade up in the library when she's done talking and gone to bed." Rango agreed and rode away quickly, calling out his good night so Annie would be sure to hear it. When he got out beyond the big gates, he rode off into the night. But a few minutes later he came back and dismounted in the darkness beside the barn. He had a good view of John Shanley's library window from that spot. He lit a cigarette and waited.